with remote viewing and normal psychic ability, where we're using normal physics that we don't really know about yet.
The incredible thing there is that it just seems to open the door for almost anything. I mean, it's not just quantum physics. I mean, there's a quadre of almost everything you can think of. If you're talking about energy and the fact that you can go beyond the scope of the United States and the world, for that matter, what else is out there? I did notice that we are going to go to break here in a little bit, but when we come back, Daz, I'd like to ask you the other types of remote viewing. I know there's various. There's the CRV and the RV for remote viewing. So if we could, I'd like to touch on all of them, so we at least name every single one of them.
And we do have questions, Kelly, too. And
okay, great.
Those who wish to call in, again, it's 914-338-1186. And we'll look forward to coming back and talking with you.
See you in a little bit.
Hi, this is Judy Collins from Judy's House of Oldies, and you're listening to Hear Women Talk Radio on the Zeus Radio Network.
When you're in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, home of Zeus Broadcast Network and Hear Women Talk, there's a wonderful adventure that you should try. Carolina Safari Jeep Tours.
Go to www.carolinasafari.com and check out Carolina Safari. Mention Hear Women Talk and get a discount from Carolina Safari Jeep Tours.
See another side of Myrtle Beach. Get wild with wildlife. Explore history, nature, and mystery on a Carolina Safari Jeep Tour.
Hello, race fans. This is Jeff Gilder, creator of RacersReunion.com. When you're in Myrtle Beach, check out my favorite, the Caravelle Resort. The Caravelle Resort has a golf department and concierge with golf privileges at virtually every course on the Grand Strand, including the coveted Dunes Club.
And ladies, pamper yourself with Caravelle's Studio Spa, featuring services such as Swedish massage, heated stone therapy, reflexology, manicures, pedicures, facials, and more. Awaken your senses with the most requested massage and spa therapies.
The Caravelle Resort, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, 800-507-9145. Get the best rate on the Grand Strand when you use promo code RACERS at thecaravelle.com. 800-507-9145.
Hi folks, this is private investigator Vicki Childs, host of the Vicki Childs Show on Hear Women Talk Radio. How safe is your cell phone? Is someone listening to all your calls or reading your text messages? How about your computer? Is someone watching all your keystrokes? Or do you want to know what your child, your employee, or your spouse are doing on a computer or cell phone? If you need computer or cell phone forensics, do what I do. Talk to Steve Abrams at abramsforensics.com. Steve is a highly respected and skilled forensics expert as well as an attorney. Contact Steve Abrams for a free 15-minute consultation at abramsforensics.com. That's abramsforensics.com, or click on the Abrams Forensics banner ad on Hear Women Talk and use promo code HWT.
Hi, this is Kay Van Hoosen, founder of Hear Women Talk. Every Monday you can return to love with Jen Ward in Genuine Healing. Jen is an empath, a healer, and an intuitive, and Jen will show you how to remove blockages, heal yourself, and feel love. That's Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern on Hear Women Talk.
This is Paul Truelove on Zeus Radio Network for HearWomenTalk.com.
Police Psychics. Findme.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Kelly Snyder with Valerie Graham, and it's Findme, Police, Psychics, and More. We have as our guest today Daz Smith, who is a controlled remote viewer. And just before we broke, we were on the topic of the different types of remote viewing. If you would, you had a little bit. There was some mention of it in one of your responses, Daz. If you would identify each and every one of them, please.
Yeah. Okay. First, we start off with the 3 different types that came out of the military, and that was controlled remote viewing, which is CRV. The next one was WRV, which is written remote viewing, and that's different because that one did involve channeling. People channeled and then automatically writ on sheets of paper.
Okay.
And the third one that came out of the military was one called ERV, which is extended remote viewing. And essentially what happened in that one was the remote viewer led down on a seat, nice and comfy, and they were in a half asleep state, almost like an OBE state. And they did the remote viewing that way. So that's the
the sleep state, isn't that part and parcel of some of what the channelers do, though?
No, because the channelers would be sat at a table. They'd be sat at a table with a sheet of paper in front of them, with their eyes closed at times, but then writing. But the ERV state, the person is very, very close to being very asleep.
There seems to be some confusion, Daz, by whether, I know someone asked, Shirley asked, if remote viewers could be used to turn a meteor's path if it were headed to Earth. Is there a differential between the remote viewers who can, see what's going on versus actually act upon it?
Well, that's a good question, and that's something the military was very interested in. And it's what we call remote influencing, which is a different part of remote viewing. Remote viewers essentially look at targets and then they describe everything they get in the intuitive process. Remote influencing is not really talked about much within our field because people don't like to talk about it because of the consequences of it. But essentially it's where a psychic could try to influence a predictive event or try to influence the mind of a person, that kind of thing.
Telekinetically, so to speak? Yes.
There is scientific evidence out there to show that any time we create a thought in our heads anyway, that that thought can influence. So we're all influencing the world around us anyway.
This is just more specifically targeted.
It is. It is, and there are stories within the field from people like Yuri Geller, who did do some remote viewing for the military in the 70s, where he was asked to go along to certain talks where the Americans were talking with the Russians about disarmament, and he was asked to project himself into the head of the person doing the talks for the Russians and try to influence them to the positive decisions. So it has been used in the past.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think something that needs to be said here, too, is, you have all of the skeptics of the world, and usually, you don't give them the time of day because most of them haven't done the research to really look into the psychic phenomena. They just make comments and statements that are negative to this. But certainly it's important to state that the governments from all around the world thought enough to do some research as to controlled remote viewing and other modalities within the remote viewing scenario. But at least, the government proved that this stuff is worthwhile.
Well, is there even a country that didn't use it, Daz?
Well, yeah, I'm sure.
Probably not. I mean, I've read all the 89,000 CIA documents that came out about the program, and for 23 years, from 1972 to 1995, they had an active program that looked at every aspect of remote viewing and psychic ability, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of experiments and trials here over 23 years, and they spent 23 million looking at this. And they don't spend that kind of money year on, year out unless they were getting positive results.
Well, what are some of the results that happened? You were talking about spies and other such things.
I mean, the remote viewing results themselves, they did all kinds of stuff. The remote viewers were tasked quite often at looking at the secret bases all in around Russia to see what they were doing, to see what kind of nuclear arms they were building, what kind of rockets they were building. They did lots of that kind of work. they also tried to look for Russian spies, so they would give the remote viewer a photograph and ask them to describe the activity of a person in that photograph to see if they were doing any kind of like spying activities. They also asked the remote viewers to try to predict or to try to look at any future or technologies that were being built within these Cold War countries. So that, they did look and they did get information on things like ballistic submarines and stealth planes. The list goes on and on. Into the 90s, the remote viewing unit for the military also did a lot of work for the US government trying to find drug trafficking on boats that was going on. So they were trying.
How
to
has that worked?
Drugs.
Do you know?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the exact results on that, because bearing in mind we have these 89,000 documents from the military, but at times where the information gets quite sensitive,
you won't
get the
find
document, and there'd be a big chunk of the document that's blacked out. But I think they had spotty results with the trying to find the drugs that were being trafficked, because one of the problems we have within remote viewing is what we call a search problem, because remote viewing is designed and is very good at describing, and that's all we do. So whatever the target is, if it's like a missing person for Kelly, I will try to describe in best ways possible the location of that missing person. But one of the rules of remote viewing, and when we're taught it, is we're not allowed to identify or put a name to things. So
why?
Because part of the process, the person that created the process of remote viewing, Ingo Swann, he identified very early on that the errors, or what we call the noise within being psychic, comes from when information comes into the person, and then that person tries to analyze that information and tries to put a name to it.
I see.
When you try to put a name to it, your mind almost guesses a conclusion, and that guess is usually incorrect.
So without naming, you were able to just give your impressions.
Yes, but and that's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing.
The significance, Daz, that what you bring to the table, though, is it's not really necessary to give me a name on a missing person. We already have that data, but you're identifying area. Now, the only thing that comes into play when you're doing the remote viewing on a missing person is if they're on the move, just like it would be with a suspect. If he knows he's on, someone is looking for him, then he's on the move, and it's not always easy to locate this individual by putting a address and or GPS coordinate on him. But before I forget, too, I got off the topic here a little bit. We had the CRV, WRV, and ERV. What are the other remote viewing areas?
Yeah, so those three are the main ones that came out of the military. And then in 1995, when it became public and moved into the public sector, all the ex-CIA spies that were trained in this started setting up their own schools. And some of the schools that are right now teaching are one called TRV, which is Technical Remote Viewing. And that's an offshoot of CRV, so it's essentially the same as CRV.
Okay.
And then there's another one called SRV, which is Scientific Remote Viewing. And again, that's another offshoot of CRV. And another main one out there at the moment is a technique called HRVG, and that's Hawaii Remote Viewing. And that's another school which again comes from CRV, and that's based on the island of Hawaii there.